Hello and welcome to the King Heroes Journey podcast. My name is Beth Martins and I was muted. It's always good to get those little technical things in a row. So we're going to have a very special interview today of Grant Genereux, who is credited with discovering that so-called vitamin A, which I'm pretty confident to call it now, is in fact a toxin and a poison. And Grant, I see you are in the backstage right now, so I'll just do a little bit of an introduction. I'll bring you on and say hello to Matt. Welcome. And Jen Pepler, I'm glad you're here over on Rumble. We are live to Facebook, YouTube, which is my new channel, X and Rumble and Vigilante TV. Some people have been telling me, by the way, that they're finding some older interviews are deleted, and that's because the entire YouTube channel was deleted. So you can usually search and find them on Rockfin. And if you go to my blog, you'll find a Rockfin link. I can't upload to Rockfin anymore, so we're not doing that. But some of those older interviews are there. They also exist on my podcast. So you can always find these recordings after the fact at Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Podbean and a whole bunch of other of those channels as well. So if you're looking for my older stuff, the podcast and Rockfin are probably the most reliable. And so the King Heroes Journey podcast, for anybody that's new around here, is an opportunity for me to, first of all, repent for my years of feminism, where I thought that every problem in the world was a result of some man's doing. And I had a very big awakening in 2015 when my father passed away and discovered that to be absolutely not true. So even though my father had passed, I wanted to leave this as a little bit of a legacy for him and help to highlight the strong souls out there. They're often men. Women also are king heroes, but that are willing to go against the grain and to say the things that are true for them and that they've discovered, and knowing that they're going to be taking a hit for that there's going to be attacks. And especially any early adopters or inventors or creators or discoverers are going to be hit the worst and the hardest, because why people have a lot of resistance to the truth, even, those of us in the so-called truth and freedom movement. You think you want the truth, and people go so far, but they only go so far and they don't want to go further. So this is a huge opportunity to talk with Grant. And I just wanted to let people know that I discovered Grant and his work through Dr. Garrett Smith. I wanted to shout out to him, who is also on the front lines of this discovery, actually helping people. I have been involved and doing this what I call love your liver paradigm, or working in the toxic bile world and awareness of that for about 8 months now. I've seen enormous changes, and I've also faced huge hardships. So it's not to say that this is the easy path. It's not. But at some point, people realize with their health that the so-called easy path isn't the easy path at all, and that it's just delaying some what can be, unfortunately, grave difficulties along the way. So I have shared my story in my book called Journey. It's a map of archetypes to find lost purpose in a sea of meaninglessness. And actually tomorrow, I'm going to be sending out an email with, just in case for those of you that have followed me and, came in during the pandemic when everything was a blur, and, I was involved in a lot of different subjects I didn't even expect to be because of it. I'm writing a really good story and sending that out tomorrow. So if you want to go to my website, bethmartins.com, sign up to do a King Hero Archetype quiz, where in 10 minutes you find out where on the path of purpose you are. And this is going to be a very big subject we're discussing with Grant today, because I read Sacred Purpose on his work, where it wasn't enough for Grant to save his own life from advanced kidney disease. He had to turn around and help others with it. This is the hero's journey. And it's a sign of being awake to that and answering your call in this very weird world that we live in, getting weirder by the day. So without further ado, I am going to bring Grant on.
Hello, Beth.
Grant, welcome to the King Hero's Journey. So great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be here.
Right on, that's awesome. I appreciate your work so much. I was saying in the notes that it's possibly one of the biggest discoveries of my entire life has been achieved through your work. So thank you. Thank you in advance for that. Yeah. Well, I have a list as long as my leg of questions. So is there anything more that you'd like to say by way of introduction? Grant is a retired professional engineer and is now focused full-time on investigating the root causes of chronic disease. He lives in Alberta, Canada, here with us, with his wife and 2 sons. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, that's good. I'm just curious, Beth, are you in Canada also?
Yes, Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I always hit the wrong button there. Forgive me while I experiment for a second and find the right button. What was that? No, not that one. Not that one either. I keep meaning to experiment with this when I'm not online, but oh well. Yeah, okay. It changed on me. And then Jen's just asking about where you grew up. Was it in the Morinville of Alberta? Because your name's
No, I actually grew up near Saskatoon, a town called Dundurn, which is just south of Saskatoon, on a family farm, actually, until I was kind of grade 4, I guess, so 10 years old. And then we came to Alberta. So that's kind of, prairie kid.
Right. I think we got that newspaper. My mom worked in the media monitoring field. What was the name of the paper? Dundurn?
Oh, yeah.
Just trivia of my brain.
Yeah, I don't remember, actually.
I don't
remember the name.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah,
that won't be my most important question today.
Sure. Yeah.
No worries. Yeah. Skill testing. I didn't plan for that. And hello, Paul. Nice to see you. And Jen says, thank you for that. So feel free to use the chat. I have received a number of questions from people, and I've got a lot of my own, but I hear that there's not a strict time limit on our interview today. So that's fantastic. And it's this is a windy road that, in many respects that we're on in life in general, and with our health in particular, because there's been such incredible amounts of disinformation. I have come to the conclusion, and it is a bold claim. My friend Paul was telling me it's a bold claim that and I'm curious if we start off here just to see if you agree with this or not, that the only thing bigger than the psyop of mainstream medicine is natural health.
Yeah, I don't really have an opinion on, quote, the natural health aspect, but mainstream medicine, by nature, I'm very conservative, and 10 years ago, I had, complete faith and belief in the established medical system, I suppose. And now that's completely reversed. It's 100% reversed. I think it's gigantic fraud. So I'm not sure about the natural health space, kind of what you're referring to there, but I think, of course, mainstream medicine is completely off track and is pretty much clueless when it comes to, human health. And I think I don't know if you mean by natural health, you mean like the alternative health space?
Right. And it's no worries to get into that, since that's not your subject, but that was a big part of my subject. I don't know if you know, but I'm a cancer survivor. So almost 25 years ago, I was diagnosed with a stage 4 lymphoma, and I did everything possible to stay out of the medical system. So I had already woken up to some degree about mainstream medicine and went full on with the natural health thing. And it's amazing I survived that. So,
Oh, wow.
but like,
Okay.
but like
Okay.
we said, my story is actually told very well on Garrett's podcast, which I can share a link to if you want to learn more about that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Talk that
Understand.
length. Yeah, no problem. And Mikey says, eternal thank you, Grant. Your work saved my life.
Wow. All right. Thank you. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, that makes me want to cry. And David's saying hello to you. And Dagmar, who makes the famous black banana bread that I eat every single day of my life now. It's a necessity. And thank you for your kind words. And you love what I said about the intro. Continuing the legacy. Yeah, that's what we do. Make good on the wrongs. Or that's the hope anyway. All right. So let's get into some of the key questions that are coming up. How did you discover that vitamin A was a poison, and what was the motivation to look at that?
Well, I'm going to say almost by chance or by coincidence. So my story was, back in 2006, I'd been diagnosed with chronic kidney disease. And then as that progressed, I ended up getting severe adult eczema and, repeated visits back and forth with my doctor and kind of being sent down this, path of so-called treatments. First it was the steroid creams and, other things tried and whatever. Just over a period of time, my doctor finally told me, well, there's nothing we can do for you. You go home, right? And you're going to just have to suffer with this. And so before that, I didn't even speculate that there's possibly something I could do about the kidney disease or the eczema. I'm saying eczema. Sometimes in Canada it's pronounced eczema. And so I came home from that doctor's visit and I got online and I'm just curious, what are other people doing to, since my doctor can't do anything for me, is there anything else I could do? And so I got online and started going through various websites trying to figure out, what are other people doing? And I kind of went to I did go to the mainstream established sites like the Canadian Eczema Foundation, I think it was called, and Crohn's Colitis Foundation, kind of focusing on the Canadian sites. And one of the things that I noticed was that there was documentation saying, there's trigger foods for these diseases. Specifically, the ones I was looking at was eczema and Crohn's colitis. And on these websites, they're talking about trigger foods that cause your disease to go into flare-up. And I very much knew exactly what a flare-up means with an autoimmune disease. So no explanation needed for that. And so right away that, I thought, well, that's kind of strange that, foods are causing these diseases to flare up, but yet the documentation was, we're certain that these, foods don't cause your disease. It can just make it worse. And right away I go, that doesn't sound quite right to me. And what I did, started looking at the list of kind of established trigger foods. And, it's dairy, eggs, there's a list of, 5 or 6 items that are common, regardless of the autoimmune disease that can cause an autoimmune disease to go into flare-up. And so, I'm analytical. I've got a, background in engineering, problem solving, and, gathering the evidence to kind of figure out, is there anything here? And so what I did is went to the U.S. Department of Agriculture database, an online database, and got all the molecular compounds of all of these trigger foods. And I put them into a relational database and I started doing queries and saying, what's common about these trigger foods? I was suspecting there's got to be something common because these trigger foods are causing these autoimmune diseases to go into flare-up. And what I, determined was, the commonality between most of these trigger foods is something called vitamin A. And at that time, I had no knowledge of, vitamins and vitamin A. I was completely, not interested in the medical field or, diets or supplements. I was just a regular guy going through my life. So I had no prior knowledge of this space. And I thought, okay, that's kind of surprising. This vitamin is, the common component here. And then I went to look at, the known potential for toxicity of vitamin A. It's completely thoroughly established in the medical literature that vitamin A, if you get too much of it, is toxic. And from there, I went to look at, okay, what are the symptoms of too much vitamin A? And lo and behold, I had, a lot of them. And so I thought, wow, that's kind of crazy. Like, I just thought, it's just too simple, right? Like, there's just no way, somebody else hasn't investigated this. It's just, from the time I came home from my doctor to the time I'd come to that suspicion that maybe, possibly, extreme remote chance that, my condition with the eczema is vitamin A toxicity. I gave it a chance of like 1 in a million that, that's a possibility. And then from there, I was just under the suspicion, okay, maybe I've just gotten too much of vitamin A, and it's still very much a vitamin, and I've just overdone it, and maybe let's see what happens. So from there, I just decided I was going to eliminate all the vitamin A from my diet and see if there was any response. And for the first 3 weeks, absolutely no response whatsoever, just kind of cycling between, kind of severe, medium severe, eczema. My health was just horrible at the time. And at the 3-week point, that, I was kind of, marking it off on the calendar. I'm at, day 21 here, and I'm, okay, that's enough. And it's clearly foolish, and this is not going anywhere. For whatever reason, just before I went to bed that evening, I said, I'm going to give it 1 or 2 more days and just see if anything shows up. And that night, before that, kind of leading up to that, I also had rather severe joint pain and stiffness, primarily in my knees, but it was chronic. I had that condition in my knees for, I want to say, a decade. It was, like everything else, kind of cycles from the amount of severity cycle, but it was always kind of a background joint pain. And so that particular night, I think it was on 21st or 22nd day, my joint pain in my knees completely resolved. Like, it was the best I'd felt in like a decade. And I thought, wow, that's really surprising. So I kind of thought, okay, maybe I'm onto something here, and kind of went from there. So the fact that vitamin A is a toxin or a poison is not speculative. It's completely, thoroughly established in the medical literature. That is, there's absolutely no doubt. The primary claim in the medical literature is it's only going to be a toxin if you get too much of it. So that's how I got onto this. And the question that I have, for people in the medical establishment is like, why the heck wouldn't anybody do what I did and look at these trigger foods, look at the components, the molecular components of these trigger foods, and do that simple analysis? What's common? Yeah, that's the most basic kind of investigative approach I think anyone should have taken. So anyway, that's me.
Right. Wow. Good for you. You had that analytical mind to start out with. And it's a beautiful thing to go in. I tend to approach this much more from a, feminine perspective, not feminist, but where I go with my intuition and I move towards, like I always knew about vitamin A, but I never wanted to take it.
Good for you.
Yeah, but I gorged on vitamin A foods, right? So I never did save myself. It was just one of the supplements. I just like, no.
Yeah.
And so, I'm grateful for those people like you that are like, okay, let's actually look at the molecular analysis of what is going on and what's in common. And so what was the result of that? The long-term result. Now you've just celebrated your 10th anniversary eating low vitamin A. And for anybody that's brand new to this world, you can't eat no vitamin A. For example, even someone in the chat is saying like white flour and is an eczema food, but there's no vitamin A in it. Same with, she's saying soy nuts and seeds, but I don't think that's true. What do you want to respond?
Yeah, well, white flour depends, where you are. Like in Canada, we have niacin supplemented to our flour and a few other things.
Which is niacinamide.
Yeah, niacinamide would definitely contribute to eczema. But nevertheless, anyone, I might even have that relational database around somewhere. It's 10 years old, but anyone can do that same analysis today. Just go to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, get the trigger foods, get the components, put it in a spreadsheet or however you want to do it, and you can do that same analysis. I actually published that in my ebook. I shared that data in my ebook. So
Okay.
Yeah.
And that ebook is available at your blog, is it not?
It is, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's I think that's in my second ebook. Yeah.
Okay,
So.
very good. So I'm going to put a link in the chat so people could click right on it. And we're focused on vitamin A today, but it's not the only offender by any stretch of the imagination. So we might not have the bandwidth to get into all of those other things, but I do recommend the, Garrett Smith's work, where he also explores the toxicity of copper, which is people think of as a nutrient, and vitamin E and vitamin C and vitamin many of the B vitamins, like you just said. They say the word niacin when they fortify our flours, but it's really niacinamide, not nicotinic acid. So that's a very important distinction. But for another day to talk about.
Sure.
So yeah. So then, what about that you said chronic kidney disease you had been suffering for a very long time? When did you start to notice a difference and a healing in your kidneys?
Well, the kidney disease wasn't really bothering me. It wasn't that painful at all. And there's no pain associated with it, unlike the eczema. And so in 2006, I was given this diagnosis of chronic kidney disease. And my nephrologist, after multiple series of testing and plotting it out, kind of gave me, I think it was like 5 or 6 years. He said, in 3 or 4 years, you're going to be on dialysis. You're going to be, most people go on dialysis for about 2 years, and it gets so ugly, people just, withdraw, and it's over. So I wasn't investigating the vitamin A thing at all related to my kidney disease. I didn't for a second even think that there was any possible connection. And so by about 2013, things started to get really ugly with the kidney disease. Not regularly, but in the mornings I was peeing blood. So I knew the end was coming. And so, once again, it was just the progression of the disease. I wasn't really, my health was in the toilet, obviously, but overall, it wasn't at all kind of the suffering that the adult eczema was putting me through. I don't know if I answered your question, though, Beth.
Yeah, just about how the low vitamin A diet affected your kidneys. When did you start to notice healing in that area?
Well, I guess so. As part of my kind of, I'm going to call them, checkups with my MD. One of the things, of course, is on my health history. The diagnosis of chronic kidney disease, and so they're monitoring the progression of the EFGR. What is it estimated?
Is that their marker for kidney disease?
Yeah, it's estimated globular filtration rate. So EGFR. And so that's kind of an indicator of, the state of your kidney function. And so that's being monitored by my GP. And so officially I've now recovered from the chronic kidney disease according to this marker. But early on, I guess the biggest indication was when I was first diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, it was triggered by the detection of protein in my urine. So that's kind of one of the key markers of, serious kidney damage, I suppose. And that cleared up, I'm going to say, just thinking here, probably by year 4 of my diet. So I had no longer had protein in my urine. So from the time I was diagnosed in 2006 to probably 2018, there's protein in my urine. And then by 2018, there was no protein in my urine. And ever since then, I've had no protein in my urine. And my EGFR is now in line with in range with the health guidelines. So I think kind of that's the progression of recovery from chronic kidney disease. And we actually have now 2 other people reporting that they've reversed are reversing their chronic kidney disease. So definitely related. Yeah.
Right. And how did your doctor respond? Was he curious?
No interest whatsoever. No
interest. Oh,
no,
I know.
No.
I share that after I survived cancer, having been told by this oncologist that I wouldn't survive, I was going to die without a stem cell transplant, I ended up refusing that because it's such a violence. And about, I don't know, 4 to 5 months later, I had actually been hired as a musician to play in the hospitals to give some relief and comfort to those that were there. I ran into my oncologist and I jumped up and I said, like, hey, I didn't die like you said I would. And
Right.
he just went stone cold and kind of like, yeah, whatever, and walked away.
Yeah, they sure don't like to be told that they're wrong. That is for sure.
I know it's a strange one. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it was interesting. I had a checkup with my doctor, my GP here, which my original GP retired, so I have a new one. But I've been seeing him for probably the last 6 years. And my last visit, he goes, Grant, this is remarkable. He said, you have the blood pressure of a 15-year-old. You said your cholesterol is amazing. He said, 10 years ago, you're supposed to be taken out by your chronic kidney disease, and you're doing great. Don't even bother coming back to see me. But yeah, no curiosity. Didn't ask. Are you doing something? Did you change something? No curiosity. It is what it is. Whatever. That's the way the system is.
It just is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's no point in going to war with it or trying to convince them or anything. I know I did try that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I had no credibility at the time, so I'm lucky I didn't go that deep into it. But so what's the history behind vitamin A, maybe behind all the vitamins for that matter? Have you gone down there?
Yeah, I sure have. And so I went through a lot of that in my ebooks. But for people that haven't read those ebooks. So the history of vitamin A is kind of interesting. It's one of the first fat-soluble vitamins, so-called discovered. And discovered kind of time frame is a little bit iffy, kind of 1918 to 1926, 1925. So different researchers are doing different investigations into these so-called fat-soluble vitamins. And of course, at the time, it was kind of interesting. At that time, there was a big heyday in scientific research looking for these vital amines. So they're looking for vital components that are essential to health, and there was a lot of money on the line even back then. There's potential of getting a Nobel Prize if you could discover one of these vital amines. And so there's a couple different groups of researchers, primarily in the United States, that were researching this, but it's actually a very small group of people, like probably less than 10. But kind of the study that really pushed it over the threshold and made it, quote, definitive was the Wolbach and Howe study of 1925, 1926. And it was a rat study. And I've kind of really deeply analyzed that study, both in my ebook, and then I have a subsequent blog post on it and showing, how that is just fatally flawed and just really bad science. And so from there, as far as I can tell, almost nobody in medical research or in the medical literature has ever questioned, the validity of that study and the validity of the claim that vitamin A is essential. And so it's kind of, that's one of my goals, is to overturn that determination and show that, vitamin A is not a vitamin. And why that's so important is because what these researchers did get right, and kind of so many researchers from that point on, is there's a huge amount of bioactivity of vitamin A in the human body. And there's always kind of what I would say are these excuses and false rationalizations as to this bioactivity of vitamin A being beneficial. And it's actually not, in my opinion, not even in my opinion. It's just a reaction to a poisoning. And so, anyway, that's kind of the history of vitamin A.
So they were highly.
Go ahead.
They were highly motivated.
Highly motivated, because if you can quote determine a vitamin and then synthetically quote synthetically mass produce that vitamin, and you basically have a worldwide market, like most humans on the planet, as a market to supplement them with this essential vitamin. So we're talking, even back then, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars And today, I think the vitamin A market is easily in the multi-billions of dollars per year. So this is big money. This is big industry. And the World Health Organization currently is supplementing vitamin A, and think about well over 100 countries. And so, yeah, this is a big money business, supplementing vitamins. Not just vitamin A. The whole vitamin market is a huge money making industry. So
It really is. And on the heels of that, do you consider the world of vitamins to be just a grift, if you know the meaning of that word, or
yeah,
is
yeah.
it darker than that?
Well, I think it's a bit darker than that. I think
Yeah.
the original Woolbach and All study was they had to have known. I think it's so obvious that it just cannot be what they thought they were seeing. They just wouldn't ever be able to explain that in kind of real world kind of analysis. And even in that original study, they cite, I think, 6 other contemporary studies of other researchers trying to do these vitamin A deficient diets and completely not replicating their results. And so that's one of the key fundamental basis of the scientific method, is other researchers have to be able to repeat your experiment and get the same results. And so, you know, they actually reference, I think, 5 or 6 other studies of the time where researchers was looking at trying to induce vitamin A deficiency in lab animals, and they were, you know, failing to do that. So clearly there was something dramatically wrong with their study. They didn't understand what was wrong, I don't think. I think that was a kind of a mistake. So on one hand, it's a botched study, but it's one of these botched studies where just regardless of the outcome, they were going to push it through and make the discovery. They didn't get a Nobel Prize for it. Subsequently, there is a Nobel Prize related to vitamin A, in the claim that vitamin A is essential for the vision cycle in vision. So, you know, they were, you know, kind of classic kind of academics, I suppose, you know, hell-bent on making a discovery and, you know, having their name associated with that. And so they definitely, you know, did not do proper science. So, but from there, so let's just say, my opinion is that the original study was botched science motivated by financial rewards, but not huge. Now, once you start to look at this topic and you look at it kind of long enough and deep enough, you come to the conclusion, like I have, that vitamin A is a serious toxin. Now, the reason we don't have a serious reaction to vitamin A immediately is because the body is hugely well adapted to deal with it, but to deal with it on a reasonable basis. And what's happened since the 1970s is no longer reasonable. The amount of vitamin A we're getting in our daily diet and our supplemented food is way beyond what we would have ever experienced, you know, prior. And so I do believe that there has been a very sinister plot to push vitamin A and supplement food with vitamin A to basically, you know, cause a lot of disease in the human race. And so if you start looking at the you know, the super well-known documented symptoms of vitamin A toxicity, you know, it will destroy the human body from head to toe. There's just no doubt about it. Very slowly, but it will do that. The other key aspect of vitamin A toxicity is infertility. It dumbs people down. It reduces IQ. It makes people weak. It makes them, in some cases, makes them fat. In some cases, it reduces, this is a really shocking thing for me to have just come across, I suppose, on really discovery. It's documented, is that vitamin A toxicity actually dehumanizes people. And I have multiple people contact me. And when I say dehumanizes, what it means is that it causes people to lose their empathy and human connection to other people. So they become, you know, they don't have that human bond with other people. Mm-hmm. And, you know, all of these things just kind of tick all the boxes of, you know, what, you know, certain people would love to see happen to humanity. So I in my original ebook, in my Poisoning for Profit ebooks, I made this statement that I do not for 1 second believe that this is deliberate. I've since changed my mind. You would have to be, if you are researching in this field and you look at the evidence just based on the evidence, you would have to be incredibly stupid not to kind of see the connection here. And then when you look at, the chronic diseases, for sure, in my mind, all of the autoimmune diseases are caused by a toxicity, and vitamin A is one of those primary toxins. There's other toxins that would most certainly cause an autoimmune disease, but vitamin A is one of the big ones. Vitamin A is responsible for many cancers, for sure, breast cancer, I think prostate cancer, and probably a lot of other cancers. Vitamin A is absolutely zero doubt in my mind, and I've documented this in my ebook. I think it's just beyond question. Vitamin A toxicity, long-term vitamin A toxicity, is causing Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's. So these very, very serious brain diseases. And so it just, when you start to kind of go through it like what I've done, it just becomes, okay, there's really, really smart people, highly paid people in the pharmaceutical industry, and there's just no way that someone hasn't figured this out. That's my take on it. So I've changed my belief, originally thinking that this was not, being done deliberately, but now I do think it is being done deliberately.
Right. Very good. Thank you. So fascinating that you're talking about the dehumanization. And one of the things I've been able to observe firsthand is that as people get more and more toxic, which is what happens, right? Toxins accumulate over time. So, young people don't display the signs of toxicity, whether it's exclusively to vitamin A or any other source.
Right.
But that process, like as the toxicity gains in volume, it's exactly, you're saying it, like it does dehumanize people. And I witnessed somebody die of liver disease. And they turned really exactly like you're saying. They lost their empathy. They lost human connection. They were abusive on their deathbed, kind of flailing in anger in every direction. And I couldn't help but feel like it was directly. I just witnessed a colleague I hadn't tuned in with for a very long time, never really knew them, but had seen early streams. And then they went on the attack of me for some reason. All of a sudden I catch their attention. I have no idea. And it was when I started to interview Garrett. That's when this guy popped up, which was so interesting. And then when you see him, you can tell he's really not well in a lot of ways. And then, the vitriol and the poisonous shooting out and trying to, take other people down. To me, it's a sign of that same toxicity breakdown.
Yeah, you really have to, you really have to wonder, it's like, yeah. But that's one of the documented symptoms of vitamin A toxicity is seriously compromising people's cognitive function. Yeah, no question.
Right. And Mikey went so far as to say severs our ties with God, which you could say is one of the agendas, because a godless people is very easy to control.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right. When you don't have a higher power, then you can answer to the lower powers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Welcome, Polly. And what a sad world that there's no curiosity around this, but we're curious. So we're going to pick up this torch and run with it. And so do you want to speak quickly before I ask you another question about what happened in 2020? But what about the claims that people always make, and this is coming from someone in the natural health world more so, that the synthetic vitamins bad, natural vitamins in food good? Why is that wrong thinking?
Well, that's foolish thinking, I suppose. And when I've heard that before, and it's like, these people, whoever's making that claim has no scientific knowledge, I suppose. I'd state it that way, because we're talking about a molecule. And so there's, if you take a molecule and you ask a chemist, and there's different, fields in chemistry, but you ask a chemist about this molecule and say, could you tell me if this came from a natural source or synthetic source? He'd look at you like you're nuts, because there's no distinction. It's a molecule made up of atoms with three-dimensional shape to it. There's no distinction between synthetic or natural. That's just poor understanding of the very, very basic science of chemistry.
Okay. And I'm going to ask a newbie question. How do you observe a molecule?
There's lots of ways. It's been a long time since I've worked in, way back in my university days, I did what's called analytical chemistry. And there are techniques to determine the structure of a molecule, and they're actually very well established. It would take too long to explain. I'm actually way too rusty on the science, but it's a well-established science for detecting, what atoms are in a molecule, the structure of it, and there's different ways to do it. Electron microscope that's probably a very crude way these days, but yeah. So the establishment of the composition of a molecule and its three-dimensional structure is completely established. It's like there's no speculation about it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because it's kind of coming down to in the truth world right now, where there's the arguments. Some of the people they say like, oh well, vitamins don't even exist like viruses, right? So there's been a lot of debunking around having isolated a virus, and then they're from the looks of it trying to throw the baby in the bathwater out. So they don't really have to look at this stuff. But Polly, I have empathy for you that you want to argue with that, and I do too. But I love results and I love good health, so it keeps me going in this experimentation, because I never did supplement vitamin A. I just ate gobs of it in food.
Yeah. And so maybe I would speculate that virtually all the quote synthetic vitamin A is actually manufactured from a plant source. So, vitamin A originally, it all originates in plants. So, I think all quote the synthetic vitamin A is derived from a natural source. So there's no distinction there.
Right.
Where there would be one distinction is the converting of vitamin A into retinoic acid, and sold as, Accutane or chemotherapy drug. So that's still starting with a vitamin A molecule, going through a process and converting it into retinoic acid. But that's, once again, it's a molecule, right? So there's no distinction, for the person that put up the comment about wanting to rebut that. I was saying, go talk to a chemist, go talk to a professor in chemistry and ask them if they can tell you there's a difference between a synthetic molecule and a natural molecule. There's absolutely no difference.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for answering that. And so, yeah, we could get lost in those weeds a lot, but I'm good. I wanted to ask you, were you going to say something more?
No, I was going to, maybe one more comment.
Sure.
And regardless whether or not it's synthetic or natural, let's just set that debate aside. They're both toxic, so it makes no difference. Like they're both equally as toxic. It's a molecule,
Exactly. Yeah, it was a grand experiment to remove so much vitamin A from my diet. And, like you're sitting there wondering, oh, am I going to, die or something or whatever. And then, in the short term, a lot of pressure came off my body, I could feel kidneys went into a much more restful mode. I was waking up with energy. It was all going in the right direction. So I couldn't refute it. If I just had to think about this subject, I would be at a loss, but the direct observation has made it really, excuse me, powerful. Sneeze right in your mic. So I wanted to jump.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I want to jump and talk about what happened in 2020. Where were you at in your life? You'd already been into this plan of eating for 5 years, since you're on 10 years now.
Yeah.
And what was that like for you? Was it an awakening, or were you already pretty awake to things?
Well, I don't know. I really don't kind of claim to be awake or not awake. But, before that event, I was pretty shocked, I guess, when I first started to look at medical research, and I was pretty shocked by the amount of fraud that I was seeing in medical research and the medical literature, just, basically jumping off the page at me. It's quite interesting coming from a background from engineering, because you can't do this in engineering, because, the real world will correct you very quickly. So imagine an engineer comes up with a new steel design, and you claim that it has a certain strength, and you somehow fraudulently get this onto the market. While you put it into building, the building's going to fall down. You're going to get busted right away. But in the medical research, that's not the case. It's just riddled with fraud. But I was kind of thinking, okay, the fraud in the medical research, it's like, let's say in the low percentages, 2, 3, 5%. And then by time 2020 rolled around, and the whole response there, and all the activities just kind of sent it over the top for me. It's it's not 5 or 10%. It's more like 95%, and it's endemic, and it's systematic, and the corruption is absolutely institutionalized. And I see government and pharma completely in the same bed and indistinguishable. And so, yeah, that was kind of, it just really pushed it over the top for me. And kind of the response from the medical community, like here in Canada, I think we have something like 100,000 medical doctors, and I think, 4 or 5 kind of stood up. Just the numbers of people that went along with this was just shocking to me, just whatever. So it just kind of solidified it for me, like, okay, this is way deeper and way more pervasive than I suspected. But it is what it is. Like, it's like, okay, now I know what I'm dealing with.
Yeah, that's the awakening to me. It was, if you had any doubt about the sinister nature of what our controllers hope for us, then it was kind of put by the wayside at that time. It's like, oh, okay, that is, yep. Yeah, it was a real mourning time for a short period before getting into serious action around all of this. So good to hear. And do you share Garrett's view of the boogeyman virus? You can hear my bias.
I started looking at viruses actually right in 2020. It's kind of interesting because I had no prior kind of preconceived notion about it. And I got to tell you, well, one thing maybe, I don't know if I should talk about this. There's a lot of theory about this whole virus originating at the Wuhan Institute virology. Well, I think there's another very interesting place about 20 miles up the road from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and that's the Wuhan Institute of Biologics. Right, that is, within days of this whole thing starting, went out and did my own kind of investigation on. So I think that's really what people should be looking at. I'll leave that at that. And then from there, I started looking at viruses, and very, very quickly, like within hours, you can figure out that these are, quote, not alive. They never become alive. They're just simple protein particles, but they've been deemed to be viruses. And nice name, but it's not what we've been told. And so I have a long overdue blog post on viruses. I originally started writing it, and then when the pandemic came along, there was so much media and hype against any thing such as along the lines as what I was going to write. I put that on hold and thought, okay, now it's not the time. There's going to be just too much pushback from this. But I'll eventually get my long overdue blog post on viruses out. But my take on viruses. Well, you can even, like, one of the things, if you go to the CDC website or just Google, are viruses alive? The general consensus in the medical establishment is no, they're not alive. So how do we get infected by a non-living entity? And the answer is you don't. So it's a giant scam, in my opinion. The whole virus.
Oh, good. We're on the same page.
Giant scam, absolute scam.
Yeah. That's why we called it the scamdemic.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Good. That was a scary question, just in case.
Yeah,
you're on a different page, but
yeah, no.
For me, I mean, yeah. And So yeah, getting some applause there. I agree. That's great. Yeah, at some point the veil just starts coming down. I remember asking my aunt, who is a physician, I'm like, how do they jump from the cardboard over into the person's mouth or nose or ears or eyes or something? Like, what's that jumping process? And she's like, oh, I'm pretty sure there's an answer somewhere. I don't know what it is, but I'm pretty sure there's an answer somewhere. And it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, I love her, God bless her, and everything, but there's just anyway, that's a whole subject that's been really intensely covered. So let's go back. There was a comment from Mikey who's saying that Anthony Mawson did a write-up on the reaction to COVID, but basically down to vitamin A leaking out of the liver into circulation, vitamin A toxicity from our own storage, right? It's highly likely.
That's a very common theme from Anthony. So I've known Anthony. Anthony was one of the first people to reach out to me, maybe 8 years ago, and so I've had a lot of conversations with him and a lot of interaction. We've become good friends over the years. So that's a very common theme from Anthony, and I think he's absolutely right. By the way, I think his whole anyway, yeah. So I totally agree with him. Yeah.
Right on. That's awesome. Very good. Mm-hmm. All right. So how did you learn to read and interpret the medical literature? That's no little thing.
Well, I didn't find it that difficult. I have a background in science and engineering. I've done research in a lab way back in my early days. So, I have high school biology, which I have the very basic fundamentals of biology. I have a good background in organic chemistry, in chemistry in general. I've worked in a chemistry lab doing analytical chemistry. With that background, I didn't find it very difficult to read medical literature, other than kind of getting over the jargon and there's some surprises when you read medical literature. Usually it's the disconnect between the discussion of the results and what you actually see in their data. And lots of times, it's completely different. Like, their conclusions are completely different than what their actual data shows, which is bizarre to me. But and bizarre to me how they get away with it, but they do. So yeah, I don't have a problem reading medical literature. I don't particularly like it, but I've read thousands of research papers anyway.
Right. Yeah, there's a few things that people will jump up and down and say, oh, you must eat liver, it doesn't store toxins. And then and then you look at the medical literature and it uses the word accumulate, it doesn't use the word store, but guess what, they're the same. Or in
some research papers I've read, well, actually multiple research papers, they actually do use the word store. Yeah.
Okay.
Vitamin A in the liver. Yeah. So it's 80 to 90%. The official line is like 80 to 90% of the vitamin A in the human body is stored in the liver, or accumulate, or whatever term you want to use. Yeah.
Right. There you go. Do you want to talk a little bit about the pathway? Because that's a thing where another misunderstanding comes up around. People say, oh, well, I get beta carotene. I eat a lot of carrots. I don't take vitamin A, they say. And then beta carotene is good, but it's a pathway, right? That everything ends up turning into retinoic acid. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, maybe not everything, not every molecule, but the higher, there's so many variables there, right? So yes, so plants primarily have the kind of original feedstock, if you want to call it that, for vitamin A, which is the carotenoids. And typically something like beta carotene is actually two vitamin A molecules conjoined in a kind of a mirror image from each other. So just two vitamin A molecules that are opposing, but joined by a central bond. And so when you consume that, some of that's going to be cleaved by an enzyme, I suppose. And now you have two vitamin A molecules for each beta carotene. And yes, there is a process that it goes through. Gets converted into retinolaldehyde, and eventually into retinoic acid. But that's not going to happen to every molecule of consumption. It's going to be highly variable. Depends on a lot of things. Something like the amount of fat that's in the same meal that you consume the beta carotene with is going to have a high influence over the amount that's absorbed. So lots of variables. But in the end, kind of the documented active form of vitamin A is retinoic acid, which is incredibly toxic chemotherapy drug.
Right. I was probably on that chemotherapy drug. I went through reams of it, 14 months worth. So I'm Yeah, I don't know the names of them to research, but
Yeah.
yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Retinoic acid was kind of one of the early chemotherapy drugs, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know how popular it is today, but yeah, it depends. Like, I don't think it's, I don't know, I'm speculating. I don't know how popular it is today. There's so many others that are probably so much more profitable. They're gonna push what they make the most money off of.
Right. Yeah. Serious cocktails. They threw the book at me. It was very aggressive, and I was incredibly ill. It did eat my insides out. That's,
Yeah.
when you talk about the chemical peel effect of retinoic
Mhm.
acid and
Mhm.
Accutane and everything like that, that it literally destroyed the internal lining of my stomach and my gut and
Wow.
my eyes and my nose, and like you don't know
Wow.
how much you love your mucous membranes until they are gone.
Yikes. Yikes. Yeah. Sorry to hear
Right.
that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not looking for sympathy, but
Yeah.
and I was able to heal. But so yeah, if we one of the things I'm really curious about is that like you and Garrett Smith, who's taken his inspiration from you and your books and changed his entire practice. Like literally went, night and day. Okay, everybody off vitamin A, everybody off vitamin D. I'm not sure how you guys related on that, but
Okay.
is there any difference between yours and Garrett's viewpoints? Are there any points of disagreement? I'm not trying to create trouble here. I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, probably. I think Garrett and I probably agree on most things. We most certainly agree on the big points. So I think we're completely on alignment with, vitamin A is toxic, vitamin D is toxic. Garrett has kind of positioned this as, he's got his toxic bile theory, which is kind of very similar to Anthony Mawson's approach. Anthony calls it vitamin A spillage from the liver. And if you read his papers, he's always using that term. And he's usually saying this excess vitamin A spillage from the liver is caused by some trauma to the liver. So Garrett's really kind of focused more on the cholestasis side of it. I think where Garrett and I differ a little bit, and we're kind of splitting hairs, it shouldn't really matter. But I'm more of the mind that, we don't have to really concern ourselves exclusively with vitamin A in the liver, because in your adipose tissue, it's in other places too. But Garrett's definitely right to focus on the liver. Where we maybe disagree on a few things, I've heard Garrett make some comments about cancer being a protective mechanism against toxicity. I don't really follow that. Who knows, right? Who knows? I'm more of the mind that vitamin A most certainly can cause cancer, and other toxins most certainly can cause cancer. I think once the cancer is initiated, I think it's there's a very disrupted metabolism going on, and it's not necessarily the body trying to protect you from the toxicity. So it's probably one thing we disagree on. And I don't follow Garrett very closely. I just don't know how that guy can talk so long on this podcast. So I don't follow him very closely, but I think we're in alignment with most things. Yeah, and actually, maybe I'll say this. Early on, I thought when I was listening to some of Garrett's podcasts, I'm thinking, "Oh man, this guy's just so over the top with the conspiracy theories." But now I'm all on board.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I've seen nothing but harmony between you. He recently interviewed you as well, so people could check that out. Chris said that they use 13 trans retinoic acid for leukemia still. Yeah, good to know.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And same lady sending her appreciation. And we can jump in with this question around duration paradox. Do you know that phrase that Garrett uses?
Yeah, I do. And, yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay.
So there's kind of maybe two aspects to this. So the first one is like this detox setback that so many people encounter on the vitamin A.
Yeah, how many people? Diet. How many people do you think? I saw you did a few
worldwide.
Studies.
I think we're probably close to maybe 10,000. Now, I think we have a really high dropout rate too, because a lot of people get on board and they're excited about this. They initially see some good results and then maybe kind of taper off. And I actually had a family member, same thing. Early on, he was all on board with this, and was very like me. He lost a bunch of weight, and then he just went back to his regular way of eating. Kind of just, okay, I'm solve the weight problem, and I'll just go back to normal. So what typically happens when people take on a low vitamin A diet is they go through this, what I call this honeymoon period, where they see great result initially, and then slowly things can get worse, and they progress maybe back to where they were, or maybe even worse than where they were when they first started out. So we call that the detox setback. So I don't know if that's really what Garrett's referring to on the duration paradox, but we'll get to that. So so people need to be aware of that detox setback, and I have a whole blog post on specifically that, and what not only be aware of that potential, but also you better have a plan in place for how you're going to deal with that. Now, the duration paradox, this is, maybe I don't know exactly Garrett's definition for that term, but I'll speculate. So a good example would be the retin A creams, and actually even the same thing for people eating liver. So with the retin A creams, women take this because they think it's going to improve their skin health, and basically what I'm assuming what most women want to do is they want to make their skin fuller, resolve wrinkles, or try to reduce their wrinkles, and sure enough, it actually works. So in the early stages, you start taking retin A or any retinol creams, the skin will get thicker. And what's happening is the vitamin A is actually poisoning the stem cells of the skin. And when you do that, the body responds. It's like going to the gym and you exercise, you do it enough, your body's going to respond, your muscles are going to get bigger. So when you poison your stem cells of your skin, or even the outer layers of the epidermis, there's growth hormones that are sent down to the stem cells, and the stem cells grow faster, and the skin will get fuller, and the wrinkles will disappear, and it'll be looking great. But it comes with a price. It's a long-term, deal with the devil, because the price is eventually your skin is going to become inflamed, your stem cells are going to become depleted, maybe so much so that it'll never recover, and there's permanent damage. And I've had quite a bit of contact from people who have taken on, liver, either, part of the carnivore diet or not part of the carnivore diet. And it's very common for them to say, you know what, when I first started eating liver, I felt great. I felt really good. Well, sure, because what's happening, you're consuming a bunch of vitamin A, and there's probably other things in liver that are actually maybe beneficial. So when you consume vitamin A, it's going to damage cells, and when the body's natural response to a damaged cell is to release growth hormones to replenish those cells and maybe build the tissue bigger and better. But once again, it's the deal with the devil. So you have this duration paradox where initially you're going to have some short-term gains, long-term you're going to have some serious pain. So that's the mechanism.
Right. One of the things I've been fascinated by the duration paradox, because that's what's had everyone take, in the natural health world, again, reporting from this side, is ivermectin became very popular. All of a sudden, my natural health food groups are selling it. And these are the most healthy people out there. And here they are pushing, and I say that affectionately, a pharmaceutical, right?
Yeah.
And then, oh, it's a miracle. My dad was healed and his tumors were gone. And this is exactly what ends up happening is you get these short-term results that are so impressive, and like, oh, I feel better for the first time in whenever, or and then what you do is you create a belief. Oh, I believe this drug or this substance is healing. And then when it stops working, you still have your belief.
Yeah.
And it persists. So they keep taking it and they keep hoping against hope. Everything that I ever took that had a duration paradox, I ended up consuming in much greater quantities. Garlic was one of the last remedies that I had to drop. And I would go from having, like a little bit of garlic would do the trick to, I think at my extreme, I was taking 6 to 8 cloves of garlic a day to maintain, to depress symptoms, right? And that's the duration paradox. It stops working, and I like how you say it's a deal with the devil, because there is a price to pay It's not a free ride at all by any means. And yeah, glad I never did the retinol as well. I just saw in a store advertising in the mall of a skin treatment that was retinol free. So there's some kind of awareness out there that they had to say this exact thing, retinol free.
Oh yeah. If you years ago, I was looking through the medical research from dermatologists and completely acknowledged that the retinol creams almost always lead to inflammation and the patient having to stop the treatment because it's become so painful and so damaging. So this is completely known, of course, but then they continue to sell it, right?
Right, right.
Yeah, no surprise.
I saw that must have been some kind of shift in the consumer awareness, because they wouldn't have said that. They would have just removed it and like, oh, some new thing. But they're addressing it, and that's what the corporate world ends up having to do, that because otherwise then they lose all their business. So yeah, okay, very good. And I sort of kind of want to talk about the niacinamide, Mikey, but I'm gonna save that because I've got a bunch of questions. That is the wheelhouse. I know there was a blog I was reading on your website there, but I wanted to talk about, it sounds to me like this is a sacred purpose for you, right? You're retired. You probably don't need to work and be, battling the elements out there in the Wild West of saying unpopular things. Do you consider this to be a calling?
Well, a little bit. So a bit of a backstory. Back in 2013, I had gotten incredibly sick, probably, the final stages of the chronic kidney disease. And I knew I was going to die. It's kind of, I've talked to other people who predicted that they were going to die, and sure enough, they did die. So people do know when death is approaching. At least, I sure did. And by January 2014, I was very, very sick. I couldn't get out of bed. And I knew I was going to die. I don't want to talk about that too much. I'll get emotional. And just by chance, I suppose, I was able to pull myself back from that. And so I feel like I've been given a second chance. And so most of my motivation, up until now has been, they just kind of feel this obligation to, pay it forward. Like I've been given a second chance. I need to do something.
Wow. That's beautiful. I'm making you cry.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to cry. But as you say, but now, I understand. I deeply, deeply understand how. Let's just say that this is a mistake. This determination of vitamin A being a vitamin is just a scientific mistake. It's a colossally huge mistake that is affecting all of humanity. Let's say it's some diabolically evil plot, which I do think is more likely. I don't know that for sure, but I think it's more likely. And so, somebody has to do something, and I'm just one guy, but, everything starts with one person.
It really does. I know it's a hard thing, because you face those demons of, well, I am just one person, and what can I do? But yeah, that's how sacred purpose works. And especially when you start to add up everybody's contribution. And that's the beauty of this work, how it has expanded. And got, I'm hearing about it now from a variety of angles. There's a certain number of people that I've sent this way, and that I can hear other communities are starting to resonate with it. And sometimes even the messengers didn't get it, but their people did.
Yeah, and it's like I said before, I think we're probably at about 10,000. So the doubling rate is I think it's doubling, kind of like when I say doubling rate, the amount of people interested in this and signing up on my forum, it's doubling about once a year, but it's accelerating. And so there's a lot of interest in Europe. A lot of people have contacted me from Europe, primarily kind of North America too, but and a little bit from Asia. So it is catching on. What's holding it back is just the really good success stories and getting a larger percentage of success stories. So we still have a long ways to go, but it is definitely gaining popularity. And that was my whole intent of writing those ebooks, was just to have it convincing enough, compelling enough, where people would try this and then report the results. My naive assumption was that people would, be more successful more quickly. So that's disappointing. That's not happening, but it is happening, just not at the rate and speed that I was hoping. And word is getting out, and there's lots of people now making, big improvements in their health. So word is getting out.
Yeah, yeah. People go at it from a variety of approaches. I know there's a whole bunch around me that are kind of slowly adopting the low vitamin A
Yeah.
diet and the low toxin lifestyle, and then so it takes time. It's not. I remember hearing Garrett say, like, go slow on supplements, don't go slow on the diet. Right?
Yeah.
That's something that you
Yeah.
can do right away. It's not, your body's not going to go into shock when it stops having so much poison. Right?
Yeah, well, there is a bit of a blowback effect there. Like I kind of think that maybe going, cold turkey off all the vitamin A, although that seems like the most reasonable and logical thing to do, might not be, the safest, right? Because, I did that. I seem to be okay with it, but other people, they do hit that detox setback. And so I think, I'm speculating again. Maybe there's some value in just kind of slowly kind of getting yourself, slowly reducing the amount of vitamin A you're taking in, so it's not so dramatic. I don't know that for sure, but anyway, just food for thought for people.
Good to know. Yeah, good to know. Let's see. Since this question came up from Chris, any success stories for cancers?
Well, I do know somebody who has recovered from a skin cancer on using a low vitamin A diet. I know him personally. And that's the only person that I know who's recovered from cancer. I've had probably 4 different women contact me with being diagnosed with breast cancer after, I'm assuming, reading my breast cancer ebook. And I think a few of them said they were going to, go a natural path, and a few others were not. But most certainly, I think cancer is such a serious disease. I just do not advocate for somebody, thinking that they're going to use a low vitamin A diet to combat cancer. I don't think that's going to work out. Just the timeframes don't add up, right? It's, takes, 5 more years to make a substantial health recovery using a low vitamin A diet, and cancer progresses so quickly, time is not on your side. So yeah, so far, one person I've had a report from successing recovering from cancer.
Right. Yeah, I see it now. I see cancer as, this might not jive necessarily with your findings, but I see it as advanced toxicity.
Oh yeah.
And the part that, you totally agree. And then the protective part is just how tumors form, how it encases off the poison away from the body. Like I had quite a large tumor right here, and then it, it's this sequestering away from the blood system, from when the lymph is completely overwhelmed, which actually my cancer was of the lymph. And then, so yeah, it takes a long time to get that toxic, right? It took me 29 years of my life to get that toxic. And then, so I'm still healing. I survived it. I would have said before 2024, when I found you guys, that I healed of cancer, but now it's like, no, I survived cancer. Now I'm still healing that toxicity, not to mention the 14 months chemotherapy and everything I did wrong after that. So there's a lot of stuff, but it's one of the things that I've noticed in the natural health world is that it's sort of like children playing. I'll be just kind of straight here. They're playing around, and they love the herbs and the flowers and all of the knowledge. The what do you call it? I can't think of the word right now, but anyway, darn, this is the word on the tip of my tongue. But it's not really scientific knowledge. It's more like passed down through grandma, and then it shows up in this article, but it's not a science article and it's not about studies. It's just, and then we pick up all of this knowledge and run with it. But as soon as things get serious, if there's a cancer diagnosis or a kidney disease or some kind of, thing, then they go running for the medical system.
Mm-hmm.
And even when they don't go running for the medical system, they go hard on the natural system, which is full of bombs.
Yeah.
Full of bombs. Oh yeah, double up on your vitamin D and eat more of that rainbow and all of those kind of things that can go really sideways. Well, I've had a colleague whose wife died of a very, very severe death, like awful death this year in that exact way. And then, at the 11th hour, they had the choice to go the love your liver approach, but it's not emergency medicine.
No, it's not. No.
It's the long, slow process. So, it's a kind of cautionary tale to everyone to don't wait until it got serious. And then you're going to be so scared, you're going to run into the hands of a doctor thinking that they're, oh, now you have to do this. Anyway, I'm on my soapbox here. Don't need to.
Yeah. Well, cancer is, incredibly serious. It's got to be one of the nastiest conditions. Yeah. So it's terrible.
Exactly. So I named this stream after the forbidden fruit, and I just had read one of your blog articles about mangoes.
Right.
And I used to be a huge fan of mangoes, and I ate them right out of the river in India, where we would cool them down on a very hot day, and it was like the glory of life to eat these mangoes.
Right.
But very quickly let them go. So, do you want to say anything about that around the forbidden fruit?
Not really. That was just kind of for fun. But it's interesting you mentioned India, because I think mangoes are the official fruit of India. And, whatever is chronic disease is shooting through the moon on India. So, that was just kind of for fun. And it's, just for fun. Yeah.
Right. And there's a whole psychology that goes along with eating and changing your diet. I talked about with Garrett how your diet, your food choices are very close to your religion. They are passed down through generations. Like, oh, my grandma ate this food and my mom ate this food and everybody ate the food and I eat the food without question. And it's comforting because it's got those emotional ties to it. And then there ends up being the things in your life. If I saw a plate of fruit, I wouldn't eat the mangoes right now, even though I know they probably taste amazing. And I'm a lover of food. Food pleasure is actually really important to me. But now I've learned there's more pleasure in feeling good.
Oh yeah.
Eating the mangoes. Yeah. So it becomes, it's a very big thing for people to wrap their head around, and that can take some time.
Yeah. And it's, you tell somebody that mangoes aren't safe to eat, they'll think you're insane, right? This is like, but no, they're not. They're not safe.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So we won't belabor that then. Let's see. We already talked about cancer a little bit. And do you use electrolytes at all? I know you're not a fan of supplementation, so you don't take magnesium or potassium or anything like that. You salt your food though?
I do a bit, not much.
Okay.
Yeah, but I've had quite a few email lately from people asking about calcium supplementation. So somehow that's become a topic, and I don't take any supplements and no calcium, and somehow I'm still doing okay. But the water here in Calgary is mountain water, so it's quite high in calcium. And also I use for my drinking water is spring water, which is actually quite high in calcium. So those are my primary reason for not supplementing specifically with calcium, because I feel like I'm getting enough somehow. I'm assuming I'm getting enough. I don't have any kind of validation of that assumption, but anyway, so for me, no, I'm not supplementing.
Yeah, I was just curious about the electrolytes. They've made a really big difference for me to have magnesium and potassium added to the sodium that I already had in my food.
Okay.
And, I can notice the very specific symptoms around potassium in particular that are easily solved. So yeah, no worries. We can go on from there. And so there were some really good questions. Shout out to Jackie in the Love Your Liver forum. And she was interested in your hair, because your hair went from gray back to the original color. And
Yeah, well, nothing lasts forever. Good things don't last forever. So, yeah, but it is quite interesting to me. So in 2013, of course, I was pretty sick in 2013, and my hair was completely gray. I was, at that age, I was completely gray. And when I originally went on my diet, within about, I don't know, 3 months or less, my hair turned back to being quite black. And even my wife at the time thought, you're completely nuts. This diet is completely nuts. And even she had to say, wow, your hair turned back to black. And then when I started to supplement, way back, I made this mistake. I supplemented with lutein and zeaxanthin, and my hair went back to, gray. And then, slowly kind of went, darker. So it's gone through cycles. And recently, I've been through a really kind of stressful period in my life, last few months, and my hair has definitely gotten grayer. So it's still, it's got some color to it, but still lots of gray. So definitely affected by stress, and I assume that's some relation there to cortisol. Yeah, so it's gone back and forth, probably 3 different times. I'm getting older too, so I can't hope for it to go back darker. Anyway, we'll see how it happens, what goes on.
sure. Do you mind if I ask how old you are?
I am 65.
Okay, very good. Good for you.
Yeah.
So a few more hair, or is it just hair related? Let's see. How many times did it revert back?
I'm gonna say 3 times. Yeah.
Yeah, 3 times. Okay, fascinating. I've been a woman of many hair things as well. That
Mm.
every time I lost my hair, it would grow back different. Like the first time it grew back all curls and
Oh,
much darker than my original color. And then the second time after I lost it, it grew back half curls, half straight.
okay.
And then after I got pregnant and cut my curls off, they never returned. They were gone forever.
Interesting. Yeah.
So yeah, the hair seems to really reflect the what's going on in the body, obviously.
Yeah. Maybe I'll mention this.
Sure.
So I don't know. You probably can't see the back of my hands,
Here, let me
but
take the banner down so I can
no,
get a
you
better
probably
shot.
can't. It's not good enough resolution. But
Okay.
as a younger man, I had reasonable amount of hair on the back of my hands, and then when I had the eczema, it would completely burned it off. Like there wasn't a hair on the back of my hands, and that's that cycle where I've gone through different periods of it being much thicker and noticeable on the back of my hands, and back to being completely wiped out. So I don't know, probably 5 times. I'm amazed that it keeps on growing back after all those kind of cycles of being burned off. But yeah, that's another hair thing.
Right, right. And do you use hair analysis at all?
No, I did it once through Garrett. Somebody actually paid to have my hair analysis done. So I did it once with Garrett. I don't know, probably 6 years ago, and there was nothing surprising coming back from the results, but I
Right.
don't remember the details. So no, I don't do that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. A few more questions from Jackie here. So, what's the biggest lesson that you've learned so far from detoxing? Does that relate back to maybe the setbacks that people go
Well, yeah, the setbacks, I guess, were very surprising and very disappointing. Well, it is what it is, though. So it's good to know, right? It's good to know that happens to quite a few people. It doesn't happen to everybody, but I guess the most surprising thing that this worked at all. Like I didn't ever even dream that this was a possibility of actually reversing serious disease conditions. But the most other surprising thing was the time frame, right? I didn't appreciate, or even I kind of assumed naively that, okay, if a disease is caused by toxicity and you remove that toxin, then you should recover, pretty quickly, like say 6 months, or, at the very longest 3 years. But I'm learning, no, it's much longer. It can be much longer. And what I'm getting, quite often I'm going to call a testimonial from somebody via email. And younger people are definitely recovering faster and better than older people. Not always, but the time frame, I guess, is the surprising thing. This takes a very long time to turn around. So it's interesting to me, and I'm kind of thinking we're missing something. Like, why is this taking so long for so many people? Why is it so slow? So I'm thinking we're obviously missing something. There's, somehow we can make this better. Don't have that answer. I have some suspicions, but yeah, so that's maybe that's the way I'll answer that question.
Right. Yeah, I'll jump in there. And one of the things that I've done this last year is to try to insert myself in Garrett's work. And he hosted me for a talk on the mental, emotional, spiritual side of illness,
Mm-hmm.
because I was doing physically everything wrong, biochemically everything wrong. But it was just by having the breakthrough on the root cause in my own unconscious
Ah,
that had me go from dying and being told I was not going to survive
mm-hmm.
to living and never having to look back. Now, like I said, I've still had, the signs of the toxicity, but
Mm-hmm.
never was again diagnosed, never got that low again, never I came back from death.
Right.
That was my only tools. That's all I had.
Interesting. Yeah.
I was doing all the wrong things. So yeah.
Yeah, emotional stress is huge, absolutely huge, and I know
Yeah.
that personally, just based on what I've been through the last little while.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's it zooms cortisol, releases a lot of glycogen from the liver, which is going to be toxic. Yeah, so it can be very big.
Exactly. Yeah, and a major plan of our controllers to keep us under constant stress one way or another, right? Because
Yeah,
that's just
interesting. The fear
eating away at
mongering.
your
Yeah,
health.
yeah.
Yep, yep.
Mhm.
Exactly, exactly. Um, what was the biggest surprise about your body through the detox process?
Well, I don't know. Maybe when you use the word detox process, and to kind of kind of phrase it like over the recovery, I suppose the biggest surprise, other than the time frame, was my dental health. So my
Mm,
dental health has been very significantly improved. I don't have maybe quote perfect teeth, but my dental health is fantastic compared to where it was 10 years ago.
amazing.
So that's like how much is that worth? Like I hate going to the dentist. I just it's whatever, everybody hates going to the dentist, but for me to be in really good dental health right now, I just count my lucky stars. Like, wow, what a blessing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
amen to that. Exactly. I just had all the metal removed from my mouth as a
Mm,
way to help the detox not be
right.
intoxing so intensely. So yeah,
Mhm.
I hope I never get any dental treatment ever again in my life. I go out of my way to take care of them and praying.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, it's intense. Good for you. And so, what's the most recent thing that you've learned about the detox process?
Oh, I don't know if I've really learned anything recently. I have recently become, interested in the cancer topic. Kind of, that's a separate thing. I don't know. I think, that once again, I'm quite fascinated. I wrote a blog post about um, my recent blog post on obesity causation version 2.0 about the role of insulin and how insulin and carbohydrates and vitamin A, it all kind of ties together. So that's kind of, I guess, my recent, I don't want to call it discovery, but recent kind of understanding about, how all these things are interconnected. So yeah, the interconnectedness of it all.
Nice. Do you want to say a little bit more about the relationship between, you said insulin and vitamin A toxicity?
Yeah. Um, so a lot of people, in the carnivore community, and also, of course, um, uh, the paleo community, is all about reducing carbohydrates, and the whole purpose of that is to reduce insulin because so many people are insulin resistant, and so. If you want to lose weight, that's going to be the fastest, most effective way to lose weight is just get your insulin level down. And the way to get your insulin level down is to remove carbohydrates. Okay, so great, that works. However, when you kind of really research it, and there's claims out there that insulin resistance is being caused by an overexposure to carbohydrates, and therefore an overexposure, long-term exposure to elevated insulin. But that's not actually quite correct in my estimation. I think the insulin resistance is actually being caused by vitamin A toxicity. That's a big focus of that blog post and providing evidence for that. And so vitamin A is causing, my estimation, opinion, is causing insulin resistance. Insulin resistance then is driving obesity and a whole bunch of other things. So anyway, it's actually really, when you look at the evidence I provide in the blog post, I don't even be really hard pressed for someone to say that that's speculative. There's really good science backing it up. So
Right on, that's great. I wonder if I could quickly find the exact article on your blog. Do you have a link handy? Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
I don't think I have a link, but it's called.
Okay.
I might be able to find it here. Obesity causation.
There it is.
2.0. Yeah,
I found it. Yeah, I found it. So okay. I'll put that in the chat here. Yeah, I've got a colleague focused on obesity, and let's see, so many subjects. So is there anything that you wrote about? Now, full disclosure, I haven't read it myself, but in Poisoning for Profits, that was your first book, I believe?
No, it's the second one. That's the
second one. It's the second one. Okay. Yeah. Is there anything that you would change about it now if you were to rewrite it?
Well, I would update the chapter on the Woolbuck and Hull study with some of the recent research showing that, there's both vitamin A and retinoic acid in casein. So I would update that. I would make a statement in the end of that book saying that I believe that this is all just a, botched science. And I would update that to say, no, I don't believe that anymore. It's, I think there's something more sinister going on. Those are probably the only two changes I would make to it, and there's lots of typos in there. I was actually very sick when I was writing those. I was still in not good health. So, and I'm terrible at proofreading my own stuff. And anyway, that's my excuse. It needs some nice editing. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, me too. Shout out to my editors. Yeah. Well, that's really good. And then Jackie also asked, what is your preferred source for finding out the vitamin A content of foods?
Usually originally I was using, I think, the USDA website. They had a really good database. I probably still do. And then, right now I usually use Google. I just Google vitamin A in, food X and get an answer.
All right. So no magic sources for us?
No.
That's all right.
But you have to be a little bit careful too, because, sometimes I've searched for a food that, it comes back and say there's no vitamin A in this food, and later on I find out, oh yes, there is. So it's like, you better check it. You better check multiple sources, because there can be definitely errors.
Right, exactly. Totally disparaging results from different kinds of searches as well. And I hear it's no longer mandatory to list amounts of vitamin A in I guess it would have to be packaged foods, obviously.
Yeah, on the food label. That's correct. Yeah, I think both in Canada and the United States. I still see it quite a bit in Canada, but maybe it's being removed. So yeah, it's no longer required on the label.
Right.
Which is a bit concerning, but
right, but not surprising given how you see this. I'll be one question that came up yesterday. I was actually at the dentist, and shout out if you're seeing this. I'm going to send you this interview. And she was asking, because she's brand new to this whole thing, and we're talking about toxic bile theory, like you said, there was two of them, and then so can bile be seen in the blood, or what are the tests?
Yeah, but once again, this is where Garrett and I are different, or maybe have a different opinion. Garrett's so focused on toxic bile, but yes, bile can be seen in the blood. Of course, if you have jaundice, that is bile in the blood, right? That's bile in the blood. So yes, there's going to be trace amounts of bile in blood, and depending on someone's state of health, it'll be more or less. But regardless of the bile, there's vitamin A in the blood too, right? So it doesn't have to just come from bile, right? So it's like, anyway, so I thought I'd put that out there. Yeah.
Sure. And sorry, with the bile, no, it's okay. Would the bile not be bound with the vitamin A? Now I'm just...
No, it probably is, but
okay.
So let's say you go get a blood test, and you can get a test for the amount of bile you have in your blood. There's different forms of bile, but
what
regardless
would
of that number,
bilirubin and what else?
I'm not. I don't know for sure. Okay. I think there's a lot of different kind of molecular compositions of bile, but there's also vitamin A in the blood with nothing to do with bile. So vitamin A is in the blood. Typically, bound to the retinol binding protein. So there's very little, almost no free vitamin A in serum at any point in time, other than right after a meal, immediately after a meal. So, regardless of the amount of bile that you have circulating in the blood, you also have vitamin A circulating in your blood. Nothing to do with the bile.
Right. Okay. So, but that's good to know that it actually can be measured. And
Yeah.
I wonder why, like whether it's vitamin A would be more understandable given the framework or the paradigm that they work in, that you need vitamin A, it's a nutrient, and therefore finding it in the blood is not going to be seen as any problem. But what about finding bile? And no?
No, it's actually documented that vitamin A is too toxic to be in serum outside of the retinol binding protein. So free vitamin A in blood is considered to be very toxic.
Okay, so they know that.
They know that. That's
Okay.
in the literature. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. And then you think they would be also alarmed at bile being in the blood because it's supposed to be in the intrahepatic circulation.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense for it to be in blood. Yeah, but yeah, it can be. And of course, lots of children are born with jaundice, right? Very young children. So
Exactly.
that's clearly a sign that things aren't right.
Born with liver disease. I know, more and more common every single day, and I'm pretty sure I was there myself.
Mm-hmm.
Chris was suggesting liver enzymes, albumin, maybe.
Yeah, those are the primary markers of the health of the liver. So yeah.
Okay, right, and ITH as well. So yeah, good. Chris knows more than I do for sure. So when people hit the threshold and can't keep detoxing, what do you think is happening for them? Like, say, beyond other mental, emotional, spiritual, environmental kind of factors, is there, it can be a little bit of a deterrent, right? For someone to even try, knowing that there's, they might face a setback, they might get a little worse. I know I've gone through a lot of hills and valleys and ups and downs, and had some. The thing I keep returning to is that when I feel good, I feel better than I felt my entire life.
Interesting. Yeah. I think maybe I'll just say this first. So over the last, 8 years or so, my health has been progressively, just very slowly getting better and better and better up until very recently. But so I think that's natural to kind of feel better over time. Even though you may go through some periods of these troughs of, poor health, but they're hopefully short duration. But I think what's happening, and I'm pretty sure that this is exactly what's happening, and is that when people take on a low vitamin A diet, they end up the liver starts to detox itself, and they end up having more vitamin A in serum. That's lots of people have shared blood tests with me, and it's absolutely for sure happening. And so when you're doing that, you're exposing yourself to more of this toxin. And so if you're not prepared for that, and you haven't taken defensive measures against it, you could get quite sick. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then the tendency every time I would have a symptom would be to like, what supplement should I take, and what should I slam it with, this herb or that herb or something like that. And now I've taken to doing nothing but staying the course. Like
really?
Just staying the course. It's, and it's scary because sometimes things would ramp up and it would require, I'll say with quotes, big guns of some kind. And now I do nothing but eat well and drink well and rest well. And the tendency has been that the symptoms come up low level and then they go away by themselves.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's been good.
Well, I think like there's the standard kind of go-tos in this low vitamin A community is, zinc, I think is very important. So you'd want to have adequate zinc. I think vitamin C could actually be used in the short term to, kind of knock down a really bad episode of a detox setback. And I mentioned baking soda would potentially be something you consider. And then there's the whole, so I think maybe those would be the three things. And of course, activated charcoal. So I think, for me, before someone starts on this low vitamin A diet, I think you should I don't really want to say I think you should. People might consider, taking activated charcoal and getting customized to taking activated charcoal on a regular basis. Be very careful about not taking too much. But so you want something to mitigate that excess vitamin A that's coming back into your blood from your liver as it detoxes. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I was always in charcoal envy because everybody seemed to be able to take some of it, and I couldn't take any of it
Okay.
for a good 7 months. And then I experimented. I don't know, maybe it was the black banana bread or something. I started having small amounts, and lo and behold, I am actually doing better with it now. Not like
Okay.
it would make me worse. It's
So
So I'm so happy to be able to do that.
is the black banana bread black because of activated charcoal? Is there charcoal in the bread? Oh, cool.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. If you
cool.
want the recipe, I'm sure Dagmar doesn't mind if I pass that on.
Yeah, and
It's
so
really good.
the bananas provide you a source of potassium. So it's good.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. And good fiber in the oats and the apples as well, and
Okay,
no sugar in there whatsoever. I adapted it to adding some spelt flour in there, and it gives it a really beautiful texture,
cool.
really enjoyable. Yes,
Yeah,
it's like I said,
cool.
pleasure is important to me around food. And I was going to ask you about your blog and how. So I just want to prepare people, say that are brand new to your blog, that when you go in there, people are there can be some willy-nilly, right? Like that they're there promoting eating eggs and
Yeah,
like choline is so important and stuff like that. So I just want to
yeah,
caution people.
yeah. There's some bad actors there. Now, I'm completely opposed to censorship. So, um, I tolerate it. Maybe I shouldn't. Some of it. There's some guidelines there trying to keep people. I've just been so busy and so tied up with so many other things. I don't even follow my own blog, and so which is terrible. But I'm going to get more active, and I guess if I spot more of that, I will kind of try to bring it back in line and just kind of monitor it better than what I'm doing. There's definitely some bad actors there. I think there's people that they're not contributing. They're causing harm. But
Exactly. My friend Paul coined the term, one of the archetypes of controlled opposition, which is very possible you're infiltrated with that,
yeah,
are the well poisoners.
interesting.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Not far from time wasters, and they're troublemakers. And it can be really petty too. That enough to just send people into, oh, there's like conflict in this zone. I'm not going to be in this zone.
Yeah, fear and doubt is the standard FUD. Yeah, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Yeah.
You got it. You got it. Exactly. Yeah. So that it's just good to be aware of that and not wrapped up in it.
Yeah. So just trying to get some free time, and I'll get back into it. But.
For sure. I'm not pressuring you, and I'm not criticizing
Yeah.
either. Just
Yeah.
to let people know, because that can be confusing. And even, I mean, Garrett's forum can be confusing too. I want full disclosure about that, because people are on different paths. They're coming from different places. They're experimenting. There's the odd person there is totally pro enema, for example, as a system, and then Garrett's like sort of like, yeah, it's okay, little okay, but he's definitely not pushing people to do enemas. But where do you stand on enemas? Did you ever use that as a detox practice?
No, I haven't. Yeah, but however, I've gotten email from probably 3 different people over the years that have used coffee enemas, and they say they're getting really good results. But I don't know. Maybe those are the same people in Garrett's farm. I don't know. But no, I've never tried it. Maybe. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I had to just share my experience. If anybody wants to know, that I won't ever use the coffee again, because I know that to be very high in copper, and I'm very poisoned with copper. But niacin enemas are the bomb, and I'm very careful not to use that tool all the time. And it's just a Band-Aid. It's just like the immediate toxicity that's in your body. I can go from being completely fatigued, like needing to go to sleep, to my energy completely returning, because my body's not working so hard to move that stuff out that would otherwise maybe not come easily. So anyway,
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, but coffee I would stay away from completely, because you are absorbing everything through your colon, right? That you're taking in, as much as people try to say, oh, it's not like drinking coffee. It is like drinking coffee. There's some difference that it
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
through. It ends up in your liver anyway. Everything that goes in your system ends up in your liver because of absorption, unless you have no absorption. But so yeah, but that's just my 2 cents there. And yeah, copper toxic to the point of being anemic. I'm sorry to hear, Chris. Yeah, that sucks. Boy, wow. I got a beef with copper. Yeah. Let's see. You're very aware of soluble fiber and the effect of. Here's a quote I was going to get you to explain. A reduction in soluble fiber will cause an increase in the amount of bile, toxic bile, reabsorbed in the enterohepatic circulation cycle.
Sure. Is that a quote by me? Did I make that
That's a
quote?
quote by you from your blog.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
I don't
didn't
remember that.
see it.
No, that's okay. I didn't remember that quote. But
Okay,
yeah, so
put it up so you can see it.
no, I'm good
You
with
remember?
it.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, what I'm saying is so fiber is acting just like activated charcoal. They're both binders in the context of vitamin A. So the more fiber you have, the more binding it will have with bile, and therefore, reduce the amount of recirculation of the enterohepatic recirculation that it gets reabsorbed. So acting the same way as activated charcoal. Now, you have to be careful with fiber, though, because if you have too much fiber, you're going to over promote gut bacteria, and with that comes there's a downside to that too, bloating and gas, and also bacteria are constantly producing alcohol and other biotoxins, so you don't want to promote SIBO. So it's there's a balance there. So yeah, I'm just saying that, repeating myself, fiber is acting the same way as activated charcoal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to repeat that caution that he's sharing, it's not like, charcoal's good, go take gobs of charcoal, or
No.
soluble fiber is good, go take gobs of it. It's not like that. This is always the Goldilocks game, where you have to find out what is that perfect amount for you. Easy to overdo on both of those.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
For myself, my tolerance for activated charcoal is actually very low. Like when I was trying it, like a quarter teaspoon every 3 days is kind of what I was being able to deal with. Any more than that, and I would start to get constipated. So yeah,
Right.
you have to be careful both. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm miraculously up to quarter teaspoon plus a day now. So it seems to be, I'm not trying to make you feel bad or anything.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Yeah. Let's see. There was a few more questions that came in on the forum that, did I cover them? Maybe I did. Actually, this is mildly unrelated, but Jojo, who's been very supportive to me, and I imagine many people in Garrett's forum, he asks, what do you think is causing the corals to bleach?
Oh, I don't want to say. Well, I'll tell you what's not causing it. It's not global warming. That's you can scientifically prove that in like less than 5 minutes. Why don't I want to say? I just don't want to say right now. Need to think about that. Yeah, no,
Yeah, that's okay.
It's a poisoning. I'll just say it that it's a poisoning, and so it's completely. When you look at it and you look at the very basic science of it, it's just like so incredibly obvious. And it's kind of funny. The original quote research that came to this conclusion that coral reefs are being, the bleaching is being caused by, global warming, increase in ocean temperature. That original research is so dubious and so scammy. It's anyway, I just leave it at that. Anyway, so here I am.
Yeah, exactly. It's I intuitively know. I use this phrase a lot these days. I won't use it. It might not translate, but just how incredibly fake everything is. And
Yeah.
I've somehow known it. But now all the research and evidence is coming in. So, yeah, it's very good. Great. Well, I wonder if I've missed any questions in the chat. You can feel free to resend anything. Mikey was asking about copper in coffee, but I don't know if that's exactly something that you've looked into.
I haven't. No, I haven't.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
I
I just
haven't.
know that I've reacted very severely to caffeine. Caffeine quit me over the years. I had to resort to a decaf only. And even then, that was too much caffeine for me. So it was a decaf every couple of weeks. And then I pretty much let that go. Now, every, 3 months or so, I'll treat myself. I still seem to like it, oddly enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So feel free if there's any, like people were talking about pork. You don't eat pork, right?
No, I don't.
Just
No.
is it just beef and bison is your main go-to meats?
Yeah, in the last year, I've kind of switched more primarily to beef. So yeah, just beef and bison. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, I find I do best on mostly beef and bison, and then just for variety, because honestly, the simplicity in eating doesn't seem to bother you, eh?
Not at all. Not at
Okay.
all.
Okay.
Just,
Yeah.
for me, it's kind of funny. Like it doesn't bother me at all. I actually like the simplicity of my quote meal planning. There is no meal planning. I like the simplicity of my shopping. I'm just a practical guy, just like the simplicity of it. And my wife gives me a very hard time about it all the time, but it doesn't bother me at all. I'm just
Right.
so accustomed to it.
Right. Did your family follow suit with you? Did they take your lead?
Well, yeah, my two sons did. I said
Oh,
did.
wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, then they went off to university and got indoctrinated into, AI and, Dad, you can't be right about this. Well, they're still, I would say low vitamin A, but they're nowhere near, as low as I think they should be, but that's fine. Eventually they'll come around. My wife has been a really slow adopter. She's finally, coming around, I guess. We have family, both on my side and my wife's family are medical professionals, and got a lot of pushback from them.
Yes, I can
She's
relate.
on their side, right? She's saying, well, anyway. So it's finally, after all this time, they're all slowly, coming on board, but it's very slow.
Right, right. I was in the 2020 was a huge decimation to my family, mostly around me, because I went public, and I was actually so grateful that I was never able to convince them to go any direction in natural health, because I was dead wrong.
Right.
I was wrong, right? And
Mhm.
I came away going like, "Oh, yay! I didn't give them any advice, and
Right. Yeah.
they didn't take any advice, and I didn't give it, and they didn't want it, and perfect."
Yeah.
Now I want to run after them, of course. But
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I've watched a lot of videos about, there's this pattern, right, where people, let's say whatever, middle age, and they decide they're going to get healthy, right? And they start running, they start eating a really good diet, blah, blah, blah. And then they get sick. And so it's amazing how many people get kind of sucked into that trap. Whereas, I know people that are construction workers and they just go through their regular life. They don't pay any attention to all these health experts and gurus, and they're doing great health-wise. You know what I'm saying? It's like, be very, very careful on the advice that you get.
exactly, I know. Yeah, that's one of the things that the law taught me to. If you make claims, you better be prepared to back those claims up, and it is your responsibility if you make those claims. So yeah, it's wise. Same lady asked, have you heard about Ivor Cummins? He'd be a springboard into Europe. He's due to hear this information and become enlightened.
He would be great. Yeah, well, I do know Ivor Cummins. Yeah. What can I say about the guy? He's got really good intentions. He did a lot of great work during the pandemic. So as far as him being able to pick up on this, I wouldn't hold my breath. I know he was selling liver supplements, not liver supplements. I think it was desiccated kidney pills and stuff like that. So anyway, I just I don't think he's a way to springboard this into Europe. And there's other people and there's other practitioners in Europe that are getting on board with this. So I think it's already starting in Europe. It's not. Ira Cummings got a huge audience, I believe. He did a while ago, so maybe he still does. I don't follow him, but so I'm a bit mixed on him, I guess is the answer.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, once there's products involved, it's incredibly difficult. For me, I had nothing at stake. I'm not a health coach. I don't give health advice. I don't tell people what supplement to take. I don't make any products for people's health. So it was really easy for me to pivot when I got new knowledge.
Right. Yeah.
But if you've got a whole entire store full of products that are jammed with vitamin A and C and D and E and sulfur products and you name it, like honestly, it would be easy to go and stay in denial terminally.
Oh yeah.
Even as people start to get bad results.
Yeah.
And you hold on by your fingernails because it's your income, and then and the mind doesn't want to come along with that because that's facing huge adversity. But I want to just say, Garrett is a good example of that because he was that naturopath that was, I don't know if he made products at that time actually, but he was able to, it's called repentance, right? I was wrong.
Yeah.
And now I know, and now I'm going to do different.
Yeah. No, I agree. Garrett's been really upfront about that. And I think, very good for him. He's one of the few people that would, reverse that kind of thinking as quickly as he did. So, kudos to him. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So just, if there are people that are tuning in and they doubt their ability to pivot, honestly, I think now is the time, because you will still be considered an early adopter. You'll actually end up a champion in this world if you were to turn around and change your ways. That's my opinion. So, I don't know if I've missed any other questions. Let's see if there's anything. They're just talking about Ivor. Dagmar wanted to say a huge thank you to you, Grant, for making your 3 books available. And she now has a group of 12 people doing their own clinical research on themselves. Fantastic. That's amazing.
Cool. Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Yeah. I am the founder of the House of Free Will, which is a private association that I created in 2021 when everything was going bananas and I was trying to protect my work from being interfered with or taken down. And we have our own little, I call it Love Your Liver group in there, where there's 29, I think, at the last count of us. And we're able to share information and good videos and good blogs and things that are going to serve and help everybody. So that's cool. A really good thing to be part of. Yeah. I can't imagine doing this outside of some community context. That's what's kept me going. Both in Garrett's world, he's attracted amazing people. I don't have connections with your people over there, but yeah, shout out to everybody in the House of Free Will, Love Your Liver group, because it's more fun to research and work together. Hello, Matt. I'm glad to see you here. And how about that tech support? I'm not sure what you're exactly responding to. Is it tech support? Is that a question for Grant? I'm not sure. Here's a question from David saying, have you tested UV light? Do you understand this question?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I don't know.
Saying, and I'll say for the audio, because some people don't see the video, is David says, you have tested UV light to test vitamin A in your skin. Have you heard of that research test tool, Veggiemeter, which approximates skin carotenoid content in one of the hands of the finger?
No, I haven't heard about that Veggiemeter. Early on, I did some UV testing on my own. And I did read a research paper out of Germany on exactly this, measuring the carotenoid content of the skin. It was very sophisticated, very high-end equipment. It wasn't anything that would be available to a general consumer. So this is interesting to me. I'd be interested to know more about that.
It reminds me of being fingerprinted at the U.S. border not long ago, because they didn't like that I didn't want to put my face in their camera, facial recognition.
Okay.
Yeah. And same lady's asking why you don't eat chicken.
Well, for no really strong reason.
Just preference.
No. I would eat chicken if I had a safe source of it. So what happened? Early on in my journey here, I sent an email to one of the big chicken producers, and I just asked, how much vitamin A do you give to your chickens? And a very nice reply from them, almost within an hour, saying, "Oh no, don't worry, we give our chickens a huge amount of vitamin A." I forget what it was. It was a shocking amount of vitamin A that they're feeding to the chickens via the feed. And I said, "Okay, that's it. Chicken's off the menu." That's the only reason I don't eat chicken. Otherwise, if I got chicken from a natural farmer, not factory farm, that's not feeding. So from what I looked at the time, virtually all of the chicken feed that these farmers buy to feed their chickens is supplement with vitamin A palmitate. And so that's why I took it off the menu.
I know it's a whole different level of the rabbit hole. I feel like I need to start going down and getting to those sources, because we have access to a lot of local meat that is, but that doesn't mean the local farmer isn't, given the ivermectins and the vitamin A's and all of that kind of thing. So yeah. Even the bakery, I have an incredible bakery. They're fabulous. It's all organic, but I did hear that it is actually mandatory to supplement and what is that word? Not supplement. Fortification. Exactly. Yeah, that it's mandatory to, whether it's organic or not, that you have to fortify.
Yeah. So there's some links in my my blog post on NICE, and I have actually links to the Canada government website on what's required for flour.
Right. And if you come to Manitoba, then we're having dinner at Sane Lady's house because she raises her own chickens.
Okay. Good to know.
No pressure. And Paul is saying, thank you for allowing us to benefit and learn from your own health battles. Your testaments are like God's voice speaking truth to those of us who've been spared the suffering. So thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Appreciate. Yeah. He's a very good supporter. Love Paul a lot. And Passion Chicken would be better. Christina, exactly. All right. Well, I think I have come to the end of my questions for now. So I thank you so much for joining and being part of this discussion, even when your life has been extremely trying lately. That another thing that speaks to the purpose that some people would just, I can't do that, or need to back out because it's too difficult at this time. But it shows how important it is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. All right. Is there anything you want to leave people with and let them know about, other than your blog, or your 3 books are there at your blog? So here's
I think I'd just like to mention I did put up some recent blog posts that I think are good for people to read. One on cancer and vitamin A, actually 2 that are related to cancer and vitamin A. So if you haven't, I don't follow how many people are on my blog, or I don't track it or anything, so I don't know what kind of uptake those blog posts get. But those 2 in particular are important, worthwhile reads. Anyway, so
very good.
Thank you.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time at your blog already, and thank you, Christina, and some more thanks to Grant. Very good. Very good. I appreciate this discussion a lot, and so thank you everyone for joining. If you haven't already subscribed to this YouTube channel, or if you're on Rumble, or you're on X or Facebook, it does help me. I am shadow banned. I am always surprised that I'm shadow banned. I actually appealed to get my old channel back, where other colleagues are getting theirs back, and I was refused. So it, whatever I'm doing here is obviously offending the powers that be, or at least the algorithms. And at some level. And so that's both a good sign, but it does help me a lot if you guys can share this out, even make some comments below to the video to help it break past what otherwise would be some sharing. I'm going to shout out quickly also to my son, who goes by Psycho on YouTube. I had no control over how he named himself there, but he's done the intro and the extra music, which I'm about to play. And if you feel to go and sub to him there, then that would be awesome. That's my thanks to him for providing the music. And thank you for coming, everyone. It's been fantastic. I will also let you know that if you would like to do a King Hero archetype quiz, Grant, I should have got you to do my quiz. Maybe if you're into it, you could do it after. I don't know if you have the bandwidth for that
Yes.
right now.
Yes. Sure.
But it's partly fun, and it can show you where you are on the path of purpose at this time of your life, knowing that things change and they shift, and we are forever traveling the hero's journey. It's a spiral. You don't start at the beginning, get to the end, and you're done. As soon as you're done, you're at the beginning again. And so people report getting quite a lot of insight out of one quiz that takes you 10 minutes. I also have written an entire book on that. I would love to send you a copy, Grant, if you think that
Sure.
that would be of interest to you.
Yeah,
and
bet.
that would be fun to get your opinion on it.
Okay.
And it might be of assistance, especially when you're going through some harder times. Why am I not able to grab the link? Oh, that just sucks. Sometimes
You can send it to me in email. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
This is for the chat. I'm trying hard to try one more time. Oh, it worked that time. So this is the King Hero Archetype Quiz. And as I mentioned, the House of Free Will, which is my private association where the hope is to protect my work and to educate people and to develop relationships that will withstand the pressures of the breakups that we're experiencing in society, all the division and the crap and the corruption and the propaganda in the guise of knowledge. This House of Free Will is a haven for that. And you can apply to be part of the House of Free Will. It is an application process. I don't accept just anyone. It's kind of the opposite of being able to just jump on into a relationship with us. You have to demonstrate being the right person. Having said that, it's not, you don't need to jump through hoops. Just, I want to see that we're on the same page and you'd be a good fit. And I don't have my book in audio. I tried really hard. I recorded it, but it ended up kind of crappy, Jen. So there's still a delay on that. I'm not sure how that's going to happen. So you still have to read. Reading is still good. And I like audios too. All right, everyone, have a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you so much, Grant, for joining. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you. And thank you for helping get the message out there. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
All right. See ya.
All right. Lots of love, everyone. Bye.